Are you good to go?
Cool. Yeah, I'm good.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for joining, everyone. I'm here with Dan Stevenson. He is a music lecturer. He used to own a music agency company and help bands out. And in his spare time, he plays in the metal band Frontier. And also, when he's not doing any of that, he's busy endurance running and putting himself through pain. Dan, welcome. Thank you for joining me, man.
Thank you kindly. Yeah, really happy to get on board and have a chat, see where the conversation ends up.
See where it takes us. So I've known Dan for quite a while, actually, since I was about 5, 6 years old. And one of the main memories I have is firstly being a super kind, outgoing guy when I was little, but also specifically, we talked about football on the bus, and I had a massive Rangers book, and we talked all about the goals and all the championships. That's right, man.
I've so forgotten so many of the memories before the age of like 10. I feel like I've blocked out so much stuff, but that's totally right. Yeah.
That's true. It's the only thing I really remember before 10, really, that and like playing with sticks. But yeah, no, it's good, man. It's good to have you. Yeah, so AIM, as you know, it's all about bringing positive kind of traits into negative times in life. So we're going to be covering, anything that kind of encompasses that you're happy to share. But before we go into any of that, can we just chat a little bit about what you're currently doing and how COVID's kind of affected that time, since March? How have you kind of been?
Yeah, sure. So, my main sort of job now, I suppose, is a music lecturer up here in the northeast of Scotland. And we're working mostly online. And since March, that's kind of been the case. And yeah, that is what it is. There's not really much we can do about that. So just kind of have to like adopt a few different sort of teaching methods and techniques and get on with it. Outside of that, I was a professional musician before I was doing that. So I still play in a few projects. And so the main one that was kind of affected was Frontier. As you said, that's like the kind of main focus I've had for the last like 5 years. And yeah, that's been incredible. We've gotten to tour all over the world. In 2019, we played in like 19 or 20 countries, and yeah, we sold records, been on front page of Rolling Stone. I got to have a full page in a guitar magazine I've had a subscription to since I was 14. So
I saw that, man.
Some like actual real bucket list stuff. So it's been an amazing adventure. So like selfishly, when all this kind of happened, like if it was all taken off me tomorrow, I've kind of done a lot of the things I ever want, like more, I've achieved more than I ever thought I could with music. So I can't really be too upset. And I've been doing other things so that my finances weren't too massively affected by it. But that doesn't change how much I miss being in a band and touring. So yeah, in the time that lockdowns kind of happened from March last year, we've written a new record that's all done, recorded, and we are currently discussing releases and release dates at the moment for
this year now in 2021. Dan? Do you have an AIM exclusive?
Potentially, yeah. I guess it is. So yeah, oops, maybe I shouldn't have said. But yeah, it's all good. So yeah, we'll be releasing a record at the tail end of this year at some point. And yeah, outside of that, the other project was Section, but that's kind of been on the back burner for a couple of years now. Really kind of punky, grindy, hardcore sort of band. And yeah, so basically Frontier is like the brainchild of our really dear friend Ped. And it's mostly him, and we kind of accommodate a lot of his ideas and his vision for the band. And so, yeah, it's something that was really interesting during lockdown is that once that was kind of out of my hands, so to speak, I was like, oh, damn, I've got like no creative, like real creative sort of outlet now. So I started writing a record myself, kind of using a lot of the skills that I've been like developing over years and years. And I've just never gotten around to like writing the record. So yeah, since like August until still now, I'm just finishing off some of the tracks. I'm doing like a solo record that should be out by summertime under the moniker of Lift is the name of the project. So yeah, it's really, really exciting to be completely selfish and self-indulgent with music for a change. I'm usually working with that kind of creative push and pull. So now I get to be the selfish baby that I've always wanted to be. So
that's good, man. Absolutely. Really, nothing wrong with that. I think it's a beautiful thing to just do exactly what you want to do, I
think so.
But yeah, so Lift, that's interesting. Does that stand for anything, or is it just the word itself? I mean, to me, it talks quite a lot of just positive, I suppose. It's elevating yourself. I mean, am I reading too much into it? I mean, what does it kind of represent to you?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So I guess we'll kind of reverse engineer at some point and kind of go back to the kind of mental health point of the podcast. I don't want it to be too focused on music, but yeah, essentially, I was going through like a really, really difficult time in the last 6 months, and my creative outlet has usually been to make music that's really abrasive and really aggressive, and that kind of massages that side of my feelings of being like really miserable, unhappy, numb sort of thing. And so I got to a point where I was like, I've kind of explored as many options as I can with aggressive music. I mean, I feel like I've done as much as I can with that kind of music in terms of being creative. And so I was like, yeah, well, why don't I try and make something that's like hopeful and uplifting, and I can use that as a place of solace or like sanctuary. And so I was like, yeah, when I began writing the music, I was like, yeah, this actually like really like lifts me up. It kind of takes me out of this headspace of being like just in that kind of spiral. And so yeah, the music's like really it's like similar to like bonobo, taiko, FK Twigs, like experimental electronic-y kind of stuff. And yeah, driving music, that's kind of the best way I can describe it. Just something you're happy to just listen to and observe what's going on.
That's cool, man. It seems like you use creativity in music as an outlet for most things, I guess. Has that always been the case? Like even since, say, well, let's just go back. Let's go back to like, maybe pre-teens or during that time, teen angst or post-teen angst, I call it, because I'm still going through it. But like, no, I mean, how did you bring it back to a time that you remember when you were like, say 12, 13, 14, and how music has sort of affected that for you?
Yeah.
What did it bring you?
So like, I've had a really like unique interest in sort of relationship with music my whole life, I suppose. So like something that's really common in all threads of my life is a general obsessive nature. I've got a very obsessive sort of way of thinking, and it's how I learn, it's how I develop, it's how I do the things that I do is through obsession. So as far back as I can remember, like one of my earliest memories is sitting with a Michael Jackson tape for his greatest hits record History, and just listening to it back to front, back to front, back to front, back to front. And so that gave me this idea of just being super obsessed with just sounds in general. And then I've got an older brother that's like 12 years older than me. So when he was having all his teenage years, I got all of the records that he had that were way ahead of the curve. So I was getting things like the Pixies, Alice in Chains, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, all these things when I was like 9, 10, 11, when he was getting to like 17, 18 sort of age. And so like, I think that's probably still a bit too young for some of those bands and artists, because they're alternative. They deal with subject matters that 10-year-olds shouldn't really deal with too much, I don't think. So yeah, I guess one of the first ones was really like Nirvana. I just became so unbelievably obsessed with Nirvana. Like all the like essays in school I had to write were about Kurt Cobain. Everything I had to draw for art class was Nirvana. Like when you do the techie class where you like make a thing, it was the Nirvana smiley face. Like everything I did was obsessed.
same
like,
same with the little side CD stands that you did with the
that's it,
with the three little wooden things. I did the same thing. And on one side I had Nirvana, the Nirvana smile, on the other side I had like the big Metallica M.
Amazing.
But totally. Like I found I think for me, Nirvana definitely, but it seems like everyone says it, but there's definitely a reason for it. It's got this beautiful mixture of melody, pain, melancholy, but also this incredible energy that I found really got me through a lot of tough times, like a lot, especially like in Neutral. It's just so like gritty, but it's got like some just incredible parts to it. That's I never knew that, actually, man. That's really interesting. I actually did a talk on Kurt Cobain in my English class, and it was only the night before that I found out his middle name was Donald, and I was like, yes,
oh no way,
sweet. It's the only thing.
And then I literally give lectures on Kurt Cobain now, so I do like appreciation of music history and music composition, and I tie a lot of that into like Kurt Cobain's songwriting and the general pop culture phenomenon that Nirvana created out of grunge essentially in Seattle. So yeah, I mean that obsession with that band has never left. I mean, I still read the biographies of Kurt Cobain. I still obsessively listen to, watch tour documentaries, unseen footage. It's alarming to be honest.
Delving into Kurt Cobain, actually, interestingly, he I found, because I've got a few books here actually. I've got Cobain Unseen and his journals, and I found that what I find fascinating is the way he fights with himself, with wanting to be like, he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't care. He's like, yeah, no worries. But at the same time, like in his journals, he's like, you know, we're practicing 5 times a week. We want to get this record out. We want to play as many people as possible. And then the moment he gets like interviewed or he does this, he's like whatever, we do what we do. You know, we just play. And it's not necessarily fake, but it's about maybe not giving everything of yourself. Like actually, I think they did definitely want to be a big band, but I don't think anyone could have given that like the biggest band and a genre defining band. You know, I think I don't think anyone's ready for that. But I always found that fascinating, like how there's two complete different sides.
Well, I guess the really interesting thing, and I guess the demise of Kurt Cobain in the end is really like that juxtaposition. It's like he is this like truly the definition of the troubled, tortured artist, but he doesn't want to be seen in that light, and he doesn't want to be the flag waver for people that are like tortured artists. But in order to continue a life that you can make money and do whatever by doing that thing, you have to make records like Nevermind that sell 21 million in the first year. So it's like you have like that juxtaposition is eventually what I think just really got to him, and escapism tended to be the coping mechanism for him, I think, in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I like I think what In Utero did was there was that kind of like, right, we're going to do exactly what we want to do with that. But yeah, I think during my teenage years I found that I really went to that band when I felt really low, or when I just was going through just a really like, you know, I don't know, if the girl I was talking to at school was ignoring me, or I don't know, whatever. I was going, like, I'm gonna go play Nevermind, or I'm gonna try and play In Bloom on drums, which is my go-to. But at what stage that you remember, Dan, can you remember yourself feeling vulnerable off your mind and kind of going, right, actually the way I'm thinking is affecting me? Like, this is, because usually as we're kids, you know, if we're generally just not really bothered about, you know, our health, we'll have like cornflakes for lunch as kids. We don't really care. Like, we don't really know what's going on really. And then maybe 11, 12, 13, you maybe go, actually, you know, what kind of age do you remember going, oh, I'm feeling really low today, actually. Like I'm not feeling good.
That's a really great question, and something I've been thinking about a lot in the last couple of years. So yeah, something that's kind of been present in all of my life is that my emotions are really, really extreme in any direction, whichever that may be, depending on the situation. And again, as far back as I can remember, when I would be like really excited, I would like physically jump and scream. And when I was upset, I would lie on the floor and stamp and kick. And if I was laughing, I would laugh until I was sick. Like, all of these different kind of emotional spectrums and spheres, mine would be at the most extreme end of all of them. And so yeah, as far back as I can remember, that was the kind of case for a number of emotions. But in terms of recognizing that I was frequently feeling on the lower end of those sort of spectrums, what was around that sort of time that I found music as my real sanctuary. And Nevermind was a real key kind of component to that. It sounds so like kind of like bleak, but I literally used to lie in my bed in the dark and listen to Something in the Way, the last track that kind of goes on into this kind of like wall of noise and whatever. And I just thought it was like the perfect kind of analogy, or the perfect sort of pair up to the way that I was feeling. Just so like something with that recording is just so empty but so full at the same time. And I think that's what my emotions were at that time, is that I just I often just felt like really, really low, but it was like it was claustrophobically suffocating at the same time. And yeah, that record really helped me kind of like consolidate some of those feelings. I never worked out how to explain what that was until I got much older, but yeah, around that age, like 9, 10, 11, 12 sort of time, I think was more specifically when it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think, I think music's a big thing, and obviously with AIM, that could be, I think for me, that's definitely one of the biggest things that's helped me. Creativity and also listening to music, they kind of go hand in hand to a certain degree. I get the same feeling from listening to an album that I do, making one, kind of. But yeah, Something in the Way, that's a really powerful song. I think one of the lyrics that I found always quite haunting was, "It's okay to eat fish because they don't have any feelings,"
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, oh man, that's yeah. Again, I don't know. I guess it's sort of tongue in cheek and stuff, but yeah, there's definitely little snippets of lyrics that stick with you. For me, it's always been about melody. Do you find that lyrics or melody affect you more when you listen to music, or has it changed as you've kind of gotten older?
Yeah, that's it's evolved certainly, but the thing that's always kind of act as like a hook for me has always been melody in any form, and that's kind of developed much more into harmony as I've gotten older. But yeah, certainly melody. And so this project Lift that I write in mostly now is fully based around like themes and returning themes and using motifs in quite a clever way with music theory to kind of like trick the listener, so to speak. So I still like massively rely on melody. And then, yeah, as I got older, that kind of turned into harmony and turning that into something that could be much more challenging. So using dissonance as much more of a key feature than just like a straight diatonic melody. So as you can hear in the bands that I play in, it's a very challenging sort of listen, and melodic, but still harmonically much more challenging. And I find that really interesting to kind of dabble in a bit more now as I'm getting a bit older.
Going into the heavy element, Dan, have you ever felt yourself either, with Section to Frontier or any of the stuff beforehand, have you ever found yourself before a show feeling like a sack of shit, for lack of a, well, there's probably better words, but yeah, I mean, like just feeling super low for whatever reason, just being like, not necessarily not wanting to play, but just being like, man, I'm having a really bad day or bad week. And then and have you seen a shift from before and after the show? Or do you find it doesn't really make much of a dent? How does live performance like affect, or have you even ever had that? Or have you never felt that before stage, being like, fuck yeah, I'm about to play, I feel great? I mean, how's that kind of been?
Yeah, good. Another really good question. So currently I'm doing a master's in education, and I have to do loads and loads of academic reading on, so my thesis topic is anxiety and increased mental health issues in the creative arts. And so I've done a lot of academic reading and theorizing based on, yeah, something that you're maybe inherently more open to as a creative person. And so this ties into this quite well. And for me personally, like I find tour, so I don't really do one-off shows. I'm usually on tour for like weeks whenever I do play. Yeah. And yeah, it's a really interesting sort of situation where I've studied where it's effectively the perfect recipe for depression, because you go from these massive serotonin dumps of being on stage, loads and loads of like positive feedback, positive reinforcement, just like the best feeling in the world. And then you go to sleeping on someone's floor, or you go to having your van broken into, or you have a 10-hour drive, and then you're like to the bottom of the barrel. And so these like massive peaks and troughs in your endorphins and your serotonin release, the big up and downs are what causes that sort of underlying feeling of just like an anxiety. So yeah, tour for me is a constant battle of like, this is the best thing in the world, to like, I hate everyone around me, I want to go and just sit in a dark room somewhere. And yeah, totally. But the redeeming feature has always been on stage, and that's always been the thing that I've loved about music. And that's why my performances are so like energetic or kind of like all consuming. I kind of feel like that's the time that I get to like to like exercise the demons that you kind of like carry around with you all the time. So that it's a massive, it's such a like a battle between doing something that's inherently like actually quite bad for you, but the high of doing it is so worth it because you get to experience things that like a handful of people ever really get to. So yeah, I have to put myself through it to get to that point, I think.
Yeah. So you described the kind of the incredible highs, incredible lows, both within your own life and also actually on stage. So it's kind of like a parallel that you kind of take that with you. But I think for that you have the beautiful energetic strength of seeing a live band. Or if I was watching you, I would be like, shit, this guy is meaning exactly everything he does. He plays, he is into it. And do you think giving people that and also feeling that is kind of worth the low afterwards?
Yeah.
I think it is, but I haven't really. I've only done I think the most I've done on tour is like maybe 10 dates in a string, you know, a classic UK kind of run. So I'm very much a rookie when it comes to the hard road, if you want to call it that, in terms of touring. But yeah, and I mean, it's the highs always override. Like you could have 3 terrible shows, say, and then like if you have a sold out incredible show, it's almost like you just forget about them. So how have you felt that's affected you? Have you felt that it's kind of worth the level, if you know what I mean? Like does the positivity just completely shit on the times afterwards?
Yeah, I think so, because for me anyway, no matter what I do in my life, no matter which position I'm in, I'll always have lows at some point.
Yeah.
It's like a way up for me. Like, why not, you know, pepper pepper some really amazing experiences within that anyway. So yeah, like when we go on tour, like I love the kind of primitiveness of going to see a loud band. So it's like you make vibrations that other people receive, they have a feeling in their brain because of it, and then they reciprocate that. And that it's one of the most special, magical things that there is. It's one of the only realms in the world where you can't measure that feeling. There's no odometer that tells you the amount of energy in the room, but you can feel it. Anyone that's been to a big gig or a small gig where there's an exchange of energy, it's this immeasurable exchange that, like I said, a handful of people in the world get to be on the stage side of that. And I feel like it's a privilege to get to do that. And don't get me wrong, I've spent like literally 20 years of my life putting in the work to be in that situation, but it's still a privilege. It's still something that I never want to take for granted. So I feel like it's kind of like my duty to fulfill those obligations when it's possible to. And it always outweighs the feeling of like being low or anxious or whatever, even if it's to 10 people or like 5,000, it's the same thing to me. It's still that exchange and that kind of justification of your life choices in some ways.
Absolutely. So would you say in your negative times in life, music has, whether it's been creative, you know, you making it or listening to it, you know, it's been like the number one thing for you to cathartically release whatever you're feeling, or just even aiding what you're kind of feeling at that time?
Yeah, I think so. So I've got like two major coping mechanisms, music and exercise. But I'm not always motivated to exercise. Whereas with music, it's just so deeply ingrained in my fiber that it's just the thing that kind of like it. I wouldn't say that it like pulls me around. It lets me sort of wallow and identify the feelings and sit in that a little bit more. And like I said before, my obsessive nature is that if I'm listening to a record when I'm in a certain spot, I'll listen to that record like 6 or 7 times a day for months and months. And there's like 2 records in particular when I've gone through difficult times that I've done that with. One of them is Pianos Become the Teeth. They're a really amazing band from Baltimore. And they have this record called Keep You, and it's about the vocalist's dad passing away. And the lyrics are just the most poetic, deep, and like just exposing lyrics ever. They're just unbelievable, and it just like really spoke to me in a really really deep way when I was going through like quite a hard time a few years ago. And then I have a second one by Phoebe Bridgers, Stranger in the Alps, and in my mind she's just one of she's like this generation's Bob Dylan to me. I think she is genuinely just on an entirely different level of musical communication. I just think she's unbelievable. And so yeah, like I could tell you every note, every key, every chord, every word to every song on both those albums. It's just like something in the melodies as well. It's like we're talking about melodies just there. Like there's just you'll know it yourself, I'm sure, but just when you hear a melody that just like touches your soul, like that
Oh,
feeling I
yeah,
get
yeah.
like for all of the songs on both of those albums, it's
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I've found, for me personally, it's quite a rare thing to find that, if you know what I mean.
Mhm.
Like just that magic. I've got maybe about 10, maybe like 20 songs that I would say have shaped the way I enjoy music.
Mhm.
And you can have an amazing record, but just that little incredible chord change. I mean, G to E minor is like a classic
Oh
go-to,
yeah.
but if it's done in the right way and you have a beautiful melody over it, it's like, oh, this is so nice, because it's got, I
Yeah.
always use the word melancholy, but it's like also powerful. Like all the songs that I enjoy and I get strength from are songs that make you just go, oh man, that's the way things are, but I'm actually going to really push it. Like just really motivating songs. And they could be like
Yeah.
super quiet as well. It doesn't have to be like, pump and gym songs. It could be like a beautiful acoustic ballad that just makes you go, I think things are going to be okay.
Massively. Yeah,
And man,
totally
I think
agree.
that's special. But no, I think that's really beautiful to find those kind of two records. So yeah, I mean, I want to touch on, since we're talking, a lot obviously about audio and music and stuff, which I think for both of us and hopefully for a lot of other people as well helps and will help if they perhaps haven't, is I found myself recently listening to I don't know, not stationary sound, that's not the right word, but like raindrops or
Oh yeah. Like ambient sort of.
ambient, that's the
Um,
word, yeah, just ambient stuff. And
mm,
I had those in my headphones, and it was just like it was really nice just to have that overall sensitivity in audio, just to go. And it felt like it was actually raining outside. And it sounds really basic, but I think when you have that and you have that around you, it can also affect you. So I think for people that might not maybe be into music as much, or I don't, I always describe like, oh, what do you listen to? Oh, whatever's on Radio 1. That's absolutely fine, but
yeah.
if you feel that those kind of things don't really help you in terms of maybe giving you calmness, then it might be a good idea to ambient sounds. There's this app, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. I think it's just called Bliss Sounds. But yeah, they incorporate a ton of different things like thunder and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's
I think
changed.
that's really
Yeah.
I think that's really helpful as well. Like
Mm.
like something for me that's quite essential when I'm kind of having a spin is a general calmness. And that's why I live in the countryside. I spent like 10 years living in different cities all over the world, and I never found the calmness that I kind of needed. And as soon as I moved back to the countryside and I could have like fresh air, I could watch the sunrise, watch the sunset, go look at the stars, like all of that stuff has made me much happier in general and much mentally healthier as well. So
Yeah.
I do think, and if you have to replace that with the sounds of that environment, then I think that's also a good starting point to anyone
Go
that does
to,
feel
yeah,
like they're kind of having a wobble.
absolutely. What made you start endurance running, Dan?
So I kind of had a weird relationship with exercise growing up. I was surrounded by people that were like natural athletes. All like my twin brother and all of our friends in school were all had all the school records for whatever. And then when I was in uni, a couple of my friends were really into running, but I would never really like subscribe to that stuff. I was really just like obsessed with music. I didn't do anything else. And when I got to uni, I started putting on loads of weight because I just ate pasta and drank beer. And before I knew it, I was like, man, I can barely like see my knees. I have such a gut. And so in my second and third year at uni, I started working for a landscaper in the summers who's like a good, like he's a good friend of mine now, but yeah, basically my friend's uncle. And I just had to graft nonstop. So it was like 10 to 12 hours a day. And then I'd go running at night. And I loved how it made me feel. I love the feeling of like just working hard. I talk about this with my tattoo artist Jamie, and like we both have this obsession with having to work hard and having to like prove yourself, and nothing will make you do that more than literally just running for as long as you can. And I never really stopped after that. So the last like 4 years I've really focused that into like having a coach and a mobility coach and having targeted training throughout the year. And yeah, now it's like my thing. I have to do. Like this morning I was out running in the snow in -3, and it's like I just have to do it. This is non-optional. It's a big part of my life now.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think exercise, it is a big thing, because it is in the moment as well. It's not something that you're gonna do, or you're gonna feel. You're in the moment. You are feeling, the air, or if you're indoors, you're feeling yourself doing something. And yeah, I find that I think anxiety and depression, these kind of things, a lot of it is in your own headspace that you do that. I always describe it as, you can't really get out of your own head when you feel those kind of things. And when you exercise, you are doing it. And you could I mix it with audiobooks sometimes. So I read, but
Nice,
I really enjoy listening to audiobooks. Do you find that, being sonically stimulated, do you find that you take to that as well? Do you enjoy like audiobooks and stuff like that?
Yeah, it kind of depends on what I'm doing. So if I'm doing so like if I'm just doing like training runs and it's like really low heart rate for like 2 hours or something, then I can do podcasts. That's really good, because the idea with like zonal training is that you try and keep your heart rate within 4 zones, and the second one's like a low heart rate so that you can increase your body's metabolism whilst you run, because you burn fat stores instead of sugar stores. It's really geeky nutrition stuff. But so in order to keep my heart rate low, I'll listen to a podcast and really like concentrate on breathing. But when I'm doing like a full timed like endurance run for like a half marathon or a marathon, then I'll put on like a set playlist that I've got, and I'll just like really tune into like using a bit more adrenaline than I would for training, obviously. And it makes such a difference. Like I track all my data as well, and as soon as you can see song changes and it's linked up to the Garmin, my heart rate like fluctuates like hugely, because I basically envision certain like situations in my mind when I'm really like in the pain cave, and it just like pulls you straight out. It's really powerful.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
That's really good, man. No, I definitely feel like, I think if anyone's feeling a particularly like a spike in low mood, or really feeling down, I think again, I think it's all about motivation. But if you like have a glass of water, listen to like your favorite album or a couple of songs like on full blast, go out for a run. If you come back and you still feel exactly the same, like, I want you to message me, because that's almost impossible. At least for like the
definitely.
first half an hour after you get back, you're going to feel like, right, I'm pretty hydrated. I've done a good run, and I'm listening to everything's as positive around you as it can be. Obviously, it's not necessarily a long term. Although I say that, I mean, I think if you continue doing that, I think it's habitual. How have you found? And I think for this to kind of to talk about habits and stuff, what's this is a big question, by the way. So, but what for you has been the lowest point in your life? When have you gone, oh man, that you feel kind of comfortable to kind of talk about?
Yeah, and I'm it's more about picking which one.
It's not funny. I shouldn't laugh.
No, I'd rather have humor with it. It's fine. So lowest. So I guess I've had like three major, like, I don't like saying meltdown. That's quite reductive. I've had 3 situations where I've really been kind of at the tipping point, I suppose. Yeah, and one of them was excuse me. I'd basically lived abroad for 2 years. I finished uni. I went to Australia for a year, met my beautiful wife, now then girlfriend, now wife, and she's German. So then I moved to Germany for a year, and then I moved back to the UK. And so in that 2 years after graduating from uni, all my friends were lawyers, doctors, trainee vets, doing all these amazing things, and I couldn't do anything. I had a music degree, useless. I didn't have a postgrad in education, also useless. And all I did was bar work and landscape, and I wanted to be in Glasgow to kind of get back into the music scene. And so after like 3 years of just call center jobs, PR jobs, like flyering, just being really miserable, drinking myself into a state, this all kind of culminated into a night where I just went fully off the rails and kind of like went missing for an evening, and woke up in the hospital and kind of like self-admitted with like a mental breakdown. And off the back of that, I got referred to a GP off of potential bipolar or schizophrenia, and then that led to me getting counseling with a psychiatrist. And then that was like the long road back up, I suppose, from there. And yeah, I mean, that was like pivotal. It was essential that that happened to me. And yeah, it had to happen so that I could kind of like learn to rebuild and to like really change some things in my life and take ownership, because yeah, I think I expected other people to make things happen in my life that would change that, and that will never happen. I don't know if anyone wants to hear that or not, but no one will do those things for you. No one will make the changes for you. You are the only single person that can make that happen. So when I realized that, then I could gather up all the broken bits of eggshell, so to speak, and yeah, just start kind of like building my life up again properly from there.
Man, that's obviously like a really it's a really intense part of your life. But the fact that you went, you know what, I need to go and get help. This is kind of breaking me apart a little bit. And it's I imagine you kind of felt it's not who you are either, like this person, this kind of I guess Buffalo mood and
really
anxiety and stuff.
Yeah, but that's the problem, is that it becomes Stockholm syndrome. You become so comfortable in just being like numb, absolutely numb. And it's a real misconception about depression that you're sad. Oh, they're sad all the time. It's not. It's an absolute pit of nothingness. It's if sadness was the emotion, then that would be great. That's fine. You can deal with sadness. But being like a husk of a person for months on end, that's way different. That's a really different situation, and to me, that's my interpretation of depression. It's not one emotion.
Yeah, 100%, man. 100% agreed. Yeah. No. How did you feel? How did you feel after that time? I mean, when roughly was this? Did this
so
kind of happen?
This was in 2016. And so, yeah, like I said, pre-call, I had just turned 30 in the July, and this was in the October. And it must have been 2017 then. Yeah, not long ago at all. And so, yeah, just shortly after my 30th birthday, I think. And so, yeah, after that, I felt awful. Yeah, it took me so long to kind of come around, because like I come from a family that aren't really, they're like post-war, from Glasgow, hard as nails, emotions don't exist. And people that had depression, to them, belonged in the loony bin, as they would say. So I couldn't really open up to my family. It scared my wife to death, and I wasn't in a position that I was like really happy to open up about it. So I was actually dealing with a lot of it on my own. And as always, music was kind of like my savior in it. And I was lucky to be playing in bands that were like quite active and doing a lot of things, and I could tour, and I was running a business at that point. So a lot of external pressures. But I kind of see, I mean, like, I guess life is just like building blocks being built up and knocked down and built up and knocked down. And that was like a really good preparation for the next sort of onslaught of like low spell, because I then had developed coping mechanisms for the next sort of one that happened. And yeah, it allowed me to kind of at least be aware of what was going on, instead of like out of the blue just being like hospitalized.
Yeah. What was the push for you to change, Dan? What was the bit that made you go, right, this is ridiculous now? Do you remember? Is there like a specific time?
Yeah, there's like two kind of specific things. So yeah, the first sort of like incident that I mentioned there, I was kind of, it was actually out of more concern for my wife. I just felt so bad for her. Like, she was, I think, just graduated, and then she began working, and so she was like having to deal with me being in these like awful mood swings, working 65 hours a week in a 1-bedroom flat that I was using as an office as well, or me being on tour, and an accumulation of those things. So I just felt terrible for her. So that was my first and foremost. And then the kind of like second thing, like episode, I suppose you would call it, I was kind of getting to a point where like suicidal ideations were becoming very, very vivid. And then it became a bit of a kind of like concerned for my own well-being. And that's when I was really like, that this now is too serious to ignore or to run away from. And then that's when the major changes happened, and kind of led to the the kind of good situations that I'm in now. But again, a pivotal experience, very necessary one that I wouldn't have been well armed for without the prior episode that I'd went through.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's something as well that is very much seen in music, and I'm definitely not painting a brush over everyone that happens to be in music and also feels low mood, depression, and several other disorders. But why do you think that is, Dan, that people who are in the creative industries feel this more? Why do they sometimes feel this more, feel more things?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons for that. So inherently, people that are creative, they attach so much more of themselves to what their craft is. So like a plumber goes to fix pipes and fit fittings, but they don't extend their soul into that. They have a mechanical process, and that's how that works. When you are a songwriter or a painter or a graphic designer, you inject all of your personality, all of your life, every piece of training you've had in some way is attached to that thing. And so by giving that much to something, you become very, very vulnerable, because that then offers an insight into your soul, into who you are. And I'm literally studying it at the moment for this master's. That's the only reason I know the research behind it. And so that ties in this ideology that you are attached to everything that you put out to the world. And so then that starts to sink into your personality, the way you dress, the music you listen to. You then feel as attached to all of those things as you do to the art form, whatever that may be for you as an individual. And so that then has these knock-on effects into your confidence, onto how you view yourself, and onto like every decision you make. And some really interesting research that I found from the University of Ulster, it showed that people that work in the creative arts from the age of 18 to 24 are 3 times more likely than any other industry in the world to have mental health issues. And most of those are anxiety disorders or depression. And 62% of the people that work in that entire workforce have had suicidal thoughts of some description. And that's mental. 62%.
That
Imagine
is,
more than
yeah.
half of a workforce has felt suicidal. Like that, the numbers, the reading is like harrowing. And so yeah, that's kind of like the theory as to why, and then those numbers really do represent that. So but I mean, that's a bit too mathematical. I think in general, people are just so attached to music in general, and they become very vulnerable because of that, because it's an extension of who they are. And I've found that to be true for myself, certainly.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a scary figure. And I think it's something, I'm not sure how much it's coming to light or come to light, but that these creative industries that, I mean, recently, obviously Eric, a really incredible band, Frightened Rabbit, I don't think it was a few years ago now, 2018, I believe. Scott from Frightened Rabbit committed suicide, and it happens. That's obviously a band that is our home country, hometown, not hometown, home country. But it happens, I think, more than people perhaps are aware of, because a lot of people, music's just it is just as it is. Like, yeah, I listen to the radio, or yeah, I like this band. But if you're in the industry, and I can name on my hand already, like people that have been either through incredibly hardship times, or that have unfortunately not here anymore because of not because of the music industry, but they've been part of that industry, I suppose. So
yeah, massive. Yeah. You're totally right. And Frightened Rabbit was like, that's a really important one to mention, because Scott Hutchison, like it's like, when you know it, it's easy to backtrack it. But if you look at the behaviors on the 3 or 4 years on the lead up to Scott taking his life, like you can see it. It's the same as Kurt Cobain. There's a breadcrumb the whole way to the event.
Yeah.
And it was like so when that happened, me and my other friend Scott, actually, we've both been enormous Frightened Rabbit fans since their first album. And the day it happened, me and him went to the pub and we got blackout drunk. And it was like, I was too young to see the Kurt Cobain passing, and I was never that, like Michael Jackson and you know, it's not got the same subcultural relevance as a band like Frightened Rabbit to me. And so they represented so much of the Scottish music scene and, you know, a period of my life that their albums really meant a lot to me. And to me, that was the Kurt Cobain of my time, was seeing one of my heroes go like that. And it was just exactly when I was having one of those episodes, and I was just like, there's too much like parallel stuff going on here. It was really quite profound. Yeah, it was really interesting time.
No, that really, I think the moment things were in the news about, you know, these missing, you know, I went to listen to the second most recent album, and it was very difficult to be positive about that. I was like already like, you know, I know it hasn't officially been announced, but it was a really crazy time. And then I think, I mean, I don't know how this band affected you, but I was a big Linkin Park fan growing up. You know, Hybrid Theory, Meteora, and again, I think, if I'm right, no, it was 2017, I believe, Chester Bennington. But that was the last time I cried about I cried about someone that I didn't know passing. I was like, this is one of my favorite artists and albums, and do you know what? I think it makes listening to it definitely changes the way you listen to it. Not necessarily, I think with Frightened Rabbit, there's definitely that backtrack of like, oh my God, this is you can lyrically, it's incredibly forefront and just so plain. And I think with Linkin Park, there is that as well. Perhaps not quite as forceful as Frightened Rabbit. That's not the right word, forceful. Plain.
Yeah, present, up front, in the foreground.
Yeah. But then, you go back and you listen to it in a different way. But what other kind of studies have you found in that? Is there any kind of positivity in that? Is there any, right, well, this is the way the music industry is sometimes. What kind of things can we do to change? How can we make people more aware? What can we do as like little human beings to do, you know?
It's a really important part of that conversation. And so in my research, I've not really found any figures or anything that would represent positive change per se, but the positive change is that the options that are now available are much broader and much more apparent than they have been 10 years ago, maybe. So Help Musicians have an amazing bunch of resources on their website for musicians that are feeling burned out or need any sort of like mental health support, financial support, all of the areas where they can see where musicians start to have problems. They have a team that can help with that. So I would say that that's really an essential service now, which I think is good. PRS also have a dedicated part of their website to mental health and suggestions, I suppose, which is great. And beyond that, in the music industry specifically, not much more than that as far as I know. I think the general conversation has become forefront, and I think that's helping massively. And I think there's much more willingness to communicate on the behalf of people that aren't altogether mentally well now. And I think that's a good situation to be in. I don't know how you improve the situation vastly when we do go back to like real world music, like as in touring and releasing and having proper like release cycles. In COVID at the moment, my heart goes out to anyone that was professionally touring and their thing was to play music in front of people every night. I just do not know how they're coping at the moment. I honestly just feel so bad for anyone in that position, because it's your life. You spend 10 years building it up and it's taken away overnight. And then you are just, hoping for some help from a government that are useless, like literally useless. So,
no, it's definitely, it's almost been a year. I mean, this is the mad thing, like a couple of months and it'll be a year since this kind of started for the UK properly, I suppose. But yeah, I think it's really important to highlight that fact, you know, that there's so much more than to just musicians. There's, like you say yourself, you obviously teach music and music lecturing in various forms, but there's also people behind the scenes, road crew. There's people that are part of the venues. There's this huge community, and it goes for theater and everything. There's just so much more than to just those 4 people on stage or whatever. There's a whole back community with music. And one of my friends, he used to do sound, and traveled through Europe and stuff, and then he sort of be guitar tech here and there, and it's just completely it's completely flipped everything around.
It's wild, absolutely wild. I've got friends, so I, like, as part of one of the courses I teach on, I run like online workshops with industry professionals, and one of them works for Lewis Capaldi. He's a stage manager, so everything that's on a screen, everything on a backing track, everything on the stage, he's the guy in charge of that. Wow. And he's worked with Florence and the Machine, Lewis Capaldi, you name it, he's worked with them. And so he's basically gone from doing that to like literally just asking for any work going. We'll literally like clean toilets, and you think, like, people like Lewis Capaldi, you'd hope that there's enough money to keep their team afloat and like really keep them going. But like, just to put it into perspective for people that don't know the music industry, the guy that was the first #1 Scottish musician since Annie Lennox in the 70s, their team don't have enough money to pay them to stay employed in some fashion. So when you think about the unsigned bands and the small venues in Dunfermline and wherever, like small B towns in the middle of nowhere, like, think about how much money it takes to keep all of that afloat. And what support there is, I mean, it's a drop in the ocean. So it's really important when things do get back on board, or even if people are not sure how to help, go and have a look at a band's Bandcamp, go and put money in their PayPal. Do something that puts cash in the hand, not to a label or to Spotify or whatever, because that is how they're going to kind of recoup and get back on the road.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that's a really good point actually to mention is, keeping the singers, the artists that are, they're not quite hitting the 1,000 capacity venues yet, but keeping them afloat to live or to make more music. I've got a little Patreon page, and it's only a couple of quid a month, but it helps me go, right, well, in a couple of 3-4 months I can maybe record another song, because this stuff's expensive as well, to make good presentable art. I think at least in the music industry, it's a pricey thing, and then you've got marketing, you've got everything else behind it. But
I think people that don't know the industry, I think they would be like shocked to know how much money goes into releasing a single, never mind a record.
Yeah, absolutely.
A single. Like the digital design, the creation of the music, the gathering of the artifacts, the PR, social media payout, because Facebook has literally ruined any kind of post. Like, I mean, you are talking thousands of pounds sometimes for a single to be in the ears of some people. If you want it good, like, that's reality.
That's something I actually recently, Dan, I got really pissed off seeing this. So for anyone that didn't catch the first post, but I used to play in a band. I still play in a band called Daydream Frenzy, and we've done a few things since 2010, since we're on the go, and I think we've just got over about a couple of thousand people that follow us on Facebook. And I released a new single a couple of months ago, and it was like, you've reached 200 people, pay this much to reach everyone else. I'm like, 90% of people that we've worked for, that follow us, some of them, you have to click follow. Some of them just like it and they go, yeah, I like that band, that's cool, and they hope for the post. And I'm like, we have done that for your platform on Facebook. These are all people that are on Facebook using your platform, the platform, and I have to pay to get across to these people that are already part of our community. I say my community, it's just me currently. Any Kent musicians, hit me up. But no, that aside, like, that's really sad. And again,
it's
like
mad.
You say, it involves money. It involves doing that. So like you say, you could easily spend over a couple of grand on getting a single out properly, and then maybe recuperating if you're lucky, I don't know, a couple of
a
hundred.
portion of it. Yeah.
man.
And that doesn't change, the size of the band doesn't change that. So when I ran the management business, the biggest act I managed had 84,000 likes on Facebook, and averagely 40 people would post before you would throw money at it. And that's, I mean, that's obscene, absolutely obscene. And so that's where this kind of part of the industry where touring non-stop has had to be the thing, because that's how you make the money, is to charge the ticket price, get people to buy the t-shirt when they're there, and then you get some money because Spotify will pay you 0.0004 pence per stream. And so that equates to like 1 million streams will make you £4,000. So
yeah. And that's like a lot of effort as well. I actually got my first paycheck in Spotify last year. And yeah, I was like, well, I can maybe get one heating bill, from this. Nice. But yeah, man, it's I think people forget that as well, that the arts in every sense we're talking here, not just music, which is obviously close to both of us, but it's important for everyone else as well. Like people that enjoy the arts, like, especially in a time like this, like people relied on seeing bands to just have that positivity or have that connection, or whatever way, seeing a live. I've actually never been to a show or a play. What do you want to call it? What's it called when you see acting
like a
on
theater
stage? What's that called again?
A theater show?
Thank you. Yeah, theater show. I've never seen that. My girlfriend's like, we need to go see The Lion King or something. I'm like, yeah, sounds great, but
sure.
I don't know what to do. Do we mosh? No, is that a thing?
Yeah, I've got a really horrible what's the word, confession that I cannot stand. In fact, I would quite happily say that I despise musical theater, like the need to sing what's happening in your exact existence.
We're having a podcast now. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I literally hate it. And yeah, it's nothing that I'm a fan of. It's not to say that there's no place for it. Obviously, people love it and there's value to it, but not in my heart, sadly.
Yeah, no, that's cool, man. I think each their own for sure. I can't say because I've never been, but I think we might be on the same page.
Yeah.
When it comes to at least like when I've watched musicals, just general musicals, films. But yeah, Pierce Brosnan in Mamma Mia. Wow, I was like, I'm a Bond fan. I'm a massive Bond fan. This is gonna rule. No, a bit different.
No.
But, anyway, no, that's fascinating to hear your journey, Dan. From starting all these things, because on the outset, 3-4 years ago, done a lot of traveling, been playing incredible shows, had your music agency company, and you still felt these hardships, you still felt these times. So I think that's an important point to add is we can have a lot on the outside, whether it's a good job or even a good relationship. We can have a lot of things, but there's still these inner turmoils, and they don't necessarily have to have a tag or a reason necessarily for them to manifest.
I think it's really, really important as well to mention that I don't want to keep making this about music, but I think particularly in the music industry, it's this idea that you can't be seen to be weak, and you can't be seen to not have like the best version of your life. And like when I had that first sort of episode, I decided to be honest on social media, and that made a really big difference to the way that I live my life, because that back then, the way that I would put a picture on Instagram or put a post on Facebook, it would never actually represent what was happening. It would always be an exaggerated version of what it was to make it seem much more interesting or whatever. And after I'd gone through that episode, I wrote a poem about how I was feeling and what anxiety and depression meant to me. And I put it online, and I took it down an hour later, but I had so many messages from people that were like, yo, I feel that's how I feel, and I don't know how to say it, and that means a lot to me.
Yeah.
And that really, like, it was really like it meant a lot to me that had happened. But also off the back of that, my best friend had seen it, and I hadn't communicated how I was feeling with a lot of people, but he had set up an email address for me to email whenever I felt any of the things I wanted to, and he said he would always read them but never respond to them, so I could be as open and honest as I ever wanted to be. And it was like literally a lifesaver. Like I would spend hours writing this email address and emailing it in, and it kind of like allowed someone in the real world to kind of know what was going on, but without any judgment or any sort of consequences to me being honest. And that was an amazing coping mechanism that kind of created for me. And yeah, if anyone wants to do that for a friend of theirs that's struggling, it can really make a massive difference. I think that's something that can really be quite powerful.
That's beautiful, man. That's a really nice idea. Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that, you know, you're talking to someone, getting everything out, kind of similar to journaling, but it's to someone, you know, to
Yeah.
a good, to a person that knows you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I was going to mention something regarding that. No, the poem. Do you remember, or do you have it? Is it something that you want to kind of share?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got it stored. I definitely won't share it. It's a little bit too vulnerable for me just now, I think. But yeah, essentially it was just a description of like how like I made it very like first person. So it was like how anxiety made me feel like I was in a cage and I was like reaching for a set of keys that I could just about touch, but I knew I would never get my hands on. And then how it created internal dialogue with myself. And then yeah, it's yeah, like quite a hard read. I think it's people have their perceptions of anxiety and depression, but until you hear someone's firsthand version of it, I think it doesn't always feel that real until you see how it affects someone. So yeah, I don't really share. I've never really shared it again after that. I had it online for an hour and no one's ever seen it again after that. But I read it like probably like once a month because I think it's a really good reminder, and I don't like to shy away from things that are challenging. Like I said before, I've got an obsession with feeling like I've earned something, like I deserve something. And whether that's that I deserve to feel depressed or that I deserve to feel on top of the world, I still have to earn it in some way.
Yeah, I feel that, man. I get that. I know what you mean. It's a shame that you felt that you had to take it down, but I completely get it as well, because it's like, oh my God, this is who I am. What's going on? And everyone was so used to seeing the other part of you. So maybe it was like that contrast, like, whoa, this isn't like a cool surfing picture or something. It's like, Dan,
yeah, that's right.
You know, or whatever. I don't know. That's I know that you used to do a bit of that, but yeah. So kind of obviously feeling quite vulnerable.
Yeah.
And yeah, for me, I've always felt that talking about it to the right people, even if they don't say a thing, is such a beneficial thing, because a lot of the times I don't really want to talk if I'm feeling low. I'm like, just give me a bit of time. But the moment someone asks or whatever, and I talk about it, you do feel better. But I'm very much, personally, I want things to get fixed. So if I'm feeling low, I'm like, right, why am I feeling low? And what can I do about it? And I want to fix it. And sometimes, you know, my partner, when she's feeling maybe a bit low or something like that, I'm like, right, what can we do? Should we get some nice food? Should we do this? And she's like, I just want you to be here with me, and I just want you to hug me. And I'm like, yeah, but like, what do you actually want though? What do you need right now? What's going to help? And I'm like, I've recently had to like just twist that and go, do you know what? The fact that I'm just there for her is helping it. Just because that doesn't help me when I'm feeling like that, you know, it's
that's really interesting.
You know?
So I've got the inverse of that. So when I'm like really low, I don't want to do anything. I want to either listen to music or watch movies or maybe go for a walk. That's about the best I can do.
Yeah.
But my wife is the opposite. She's like you. She's kind of like, well, will we go to the beach, or do you want to like go for a drive, or will we go out for dinner? And she doesn't really suffer in the same way that I do, so she doesn't see it through my kind of lens, I don't think. But yeah, it's so funny, like we're the total inverse of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not necessarily an easy fix, is it? It's
no, that's right.
Yeah, but then I apply that to myself as well. So if I'm feeling low, I'm like, right, well, I don't want to, so what can I do? And
it's a really difficult thing as a proactive person. Like you want to find the way to get that thing. Like if you think about a car analogy, if your car breaks down, you find the part, refill, like do whatever the thing is, fix it, and that's it. If you're proactive, that's how you think. But the brain doesn't want to play ball with that, so it's like you end up kind of being annoyed that you can't find the fix, but you so desperately want to do that.
Yeah, I read a book recently called Battle Ready by Ollie Ollerton, who's part of the SAS Who Dares Win show. I'm not sure if you've ever watched that before. But he uses the car analogy actually. And he sort of says, you can, if you're a mechanic, you don't just fix a car. You need to know how the car works and the mechanics of it before you fix it in general. And then you apply that to the human mind as well. Like, yeah, you can try and fix yourself, but if you know yourself, then it's going to be a far better journey to go, right, this is how I am, this is how I think. And I guess that's where like personality tests come in and maybe traits, and you go, oh, I'm quite extrovert, or I think like this. Well, maybe this is how this will help me, because I'm quite an extrovert in general. So I like not quick fixes, but if I get bored easily. I don't know if it's ADD, but I get bored really easily. And I need like, I need, I need to always be alert and aware of things. And actually what might help me is to just bring things down a bit. And that's what I've tried to do more recently. So
that's really interesting as well. So when you talk about the personality traits and looking at things that kind of let you know a bit more about yourself, because I fully agree. I think you really, really need to know a lot about yourself before you go on these sort of like not self-improvement, but like the self-care sort of journey. I think it's super essential that you get to do that. And so this friend of mine that I told you that had set up the email address for me, when I had the second episode where I was really unwell, he bought me this book called Manage Your Mind. 2 seconds, I've got it here. And so, yeah, it's by three authors. Two of them, one's a psychiatrist, one's a psychologist, and the other one I think is just a general academic in education. And so they've got 4 editions of this book, and the most recent one came out in 2018, I think. And it kind of like breaks it down into layman's terms so that you can really like understand why your brain does the things that it does, but also why you as a person maybe have the reactions that you do that kind of cause you to spiral, or some of your triggers or things like that. But it's like super like analytical, and it really kind of puts it onto a like you can view it through a lens where you can really understand it, instead of being like a doctor trying to talk loads of jargon. It's so good. So yeah, I think if anyone's feeling like they just can't work out the kind of how their brain ticks, that book is phenomenal. And it took me like a year to get through it fully. It's like a proper academic sort of thick textbook sort of style book, but yeah, it's given me some amazing coping mechanisms.
Yeah, that was manage your mind.
Yeah, Manage Your Mind by Gillian Butler, Nick Gray, and Tony Hope. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of put into chapters that are maybe more relevant to some people. So there's loads on CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's loads on anger, loads on substance abuse. So yeah, even if you don't read the whole thing, it can give you some really good insight into any of those particular areas that cause you to spin out. And like for me, a big one is excess of any kind. So like I said, I'm quite an obsessive person in general, but if those obsessions turn negative, then that's when I begin to like really spiral. So like Christmas is a really big one for me. Like I'm a bit of a Grinch, and I actually kind of hate Christmas. But the issue with that is that you get a license to be drunk all day, every day. And for me, that's a terrible, terrible thing. And I don't have an addictive personality. I don't need these things to cope. But when I obsess about something, that can be drinking beer, or that can be running 100 miles, or it can be making music for 17 hours straight. But I need to do those things to their nth degree. And so when I do the negative versions of those, that's when that book kind of taught me that I have that. And that can be with toxic relationships, it can be whatever. But I think finding those things that kind of cause you to spin, and then kind of catching it before you end up going there, it's a really useful tool to have.
Yeah, no, that's I think with that as well, that's a really interesting point, is that personality is a big thing in how you get what you have in your mind. If you are I think I read recently that if you're let me see if I've got this right here, if you're more extrovert, you're more likely to be prone to anxiety if it's also mixed with neuroticism. It was something like that, man. I know that's probably like a brain fart over here, but it was something along those lines. So that obviously is a very generalized sense. Obviously, people that are introverted will also or can also suffer from anxiety, for example. But again, I think it goes back to knowing yourself as well, which I've only done recently. I've only really gone into my own one that I did was understandyourmind.com. And there's just 100 questions that you answer. So if anyone wants to have a look at that, it's a quite interesting, if not quite, I don't want to say embarrassing, but there was definitely, it's like my compassion levels are apparently quite low. So
oh, interesting.
I'm like, oh, I don't want to be a dick. But then if I look into my relationship currently, I've got an amazing girlfriend. We've been together for a year, and maybe I do need to just, instead of going, right, how would I deal with this? I would go, right, come here. I'm going to hug you.
Yeah. I think that is like super important to mention as well, is that to go on these like self discovery or like self improvement, for lack of a better term, sort of journeys, you really have to be open to the process and be willing to be vulnerable. And that was a position I found really difficult. Like I hated the idea of appearing weak or admitting things about myself or
agreed,
or any of those things. And I think the big problem with, like, I don't want to make it like political, but a big problem with when you do eventually get seen by the NHS. So for anyone that doesn't know or is a bit concerned about reaching out for help, the general process is you go to your GP, they'll refer you to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. You'll be on a waiting list for like 5 to 8 weeks. You'll get seen, and then they either give you a prescription or they'll give you another referral. And that's a bit of a cycle that kind of tends to happen. I found the first kind of version of that for me terrifying. I didn't want to tell people I've known my whole life about this, so I didn't want to tell strangers who I was on a conveyor belt for, and so I actually found that really, really difficult. And so I only really did a couple of counseling sessions because it wasn't for me. Like it really kind of put me in that position where I was a bit too vulnerable for my own well-being, I think. And so I found it a bit easier to go on the like the self-help route way earlier than I think a lot of people would or should really. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really entrust in the people that I was talking to, and I didn't feel like they were really fully on board to help me. And I didn't really want to go down a medicated route personally. So I kind of like stepped back fairly early in that process.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing, though, isn't it? Like figuring things out and going, right, well, what actually works for me? And you're not going to know what works for you until you do it. And it could be the most, it could be something that you never really thought was your jam, for lack of a better word. Like I've personally had CBT in the past, and there's been certain situations that it's really helped me. I've found that it helps very much for a specific phobia. I had a phobia 10 years ago of being sick, and it really helped me manage that. And then, since then, there's been several other things, and hasn't quite done the same thing for me. But again, it just depends where you are in your life. I think variance, people change when they get older, don't they? It might not benefit you as much as it maybe did even 3-4 years ago. You change, you change in personality, depending on your experiences. Maybe not fully here, but you know what I mean? It's it's
I just kind of, I feel like I wish when I was younger that it was more of a conversation, because it took me until the age of like 28 to even make a conversation to anyone in my life when I had been feeling all of the things I'd been feeling since I was 5. And that's a long part of your life to feel isolated and kind of alone. And like a big part of the way that I kind of operate as an educator is to really put that at the forefront. And like a big part of my lessons, like I'm essentially like an academic guidance tutor for 1-year group. And so that's everything from like pastoral care to financial help to housing, anything. And that's like I think if there's anything that I can give back into the education system, it's that's a really like nonchalant conversation. It's like, oh yeah, no, I'm feeling really low, but here's the things I'm doing. Or like if students can feel that way, then that'd be amazing. Like when I was in school, I remember saying that I wanted to do a certain job. I wanted to be a doctor my whole childhood. Even when I was like empowered by music, I always wanted to be a doctor. And I told my guidance tutor in school that, and she literally laughed and just like, no way, you'll never do that. Maybe think about being an ambulance operator. And I was like, no, I want to be a doctor. Like, I really want to like help people. And she was like, no, nah, you're never going to get the grades. You'll never do it. And then she just bumped me into all the classes below what would have got me the grades to be a doctor. And that was the level of empathy and compassion in school for me at that time. So that just kind of like drilled into me this idea of like, yeah, just don't try, don't put yourself out there, don't tell people things, because then you're going to be slammed for it. So that was like early on, it was quite like an impressionable thing. So yeah, I think like the route to fixing a lot of the things we're talking about is to like put it in early, make it normal conversation, and put things in place that allow development at an early age. I think that's kind of the right track to go down.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful, man. I think making it okay to talk about, not really like, later on we can discuss that. Just making it like, whether it's family or whether it's like lecture. I think having someone like you, man, I wish I studied music in 2020. Well, maybe not necessarily 2020, but say 2019,
a year ago,
up where you're teaching. And that would have been amazing. But yeah, I think bringing that to light is important, because I kind of feel the same. If I felt the same as well, there's maybe a few close friends, and even then you're like, I don't know how to put this across. Always felt a bit alienated, I suppose. But no, man, that's some really interesting points. I think we've covered a lot of obviously heavily how music can play a role in positive mindsets, and also getting you through certain times as well, whether it's relating to the band themselves, whether it's like you say, the melody, and also on top of that, at the same time, like you could also have fitness, whilst listening to music and reading particular books. But I think the important thing is, which I've heard you kind of really push, is don't wait. Don't wait for until it's really, really bad. Let's talk about it. At least talk about it when you're feeling quite low. It's completely normal to feel these kind of things, whether you're 12 or 92, I guess.
100%. And I think it's really important to know that there's no overnight fix, and it doesn't change the validity of your path if you stumble or if you have another wobble. That is what it's going to be. The whole journey is versions of that, and each one you learn a new coping mechanism and a way to get around it, and it makes you such a stronger character for it. And don't feel like there's any shame in that. Like that's where the real growth is when you have these other trip ups, and I think it's worth learning that early, so you don't feel discouraged when you do kind of slip back or backslide a little bit. I think it's quite important to know that.
Absolutely, man. Awesome. No, that's great, Dan. I feel like I feel this is like long overdue.
Definitely. I think outside of the podcast, it's nice to kind of touch base with someone that is kind of like intertwined in a big part of your life that you don't really like keep in contact with or know the latest version of. So I think it's been really nice catching up.
It's good, man. For anyone that kind of, I guess, works on like bullet point, say, strategies from kind of your own journey, what are kind of say top 3 or more, what are points that you kind of want to share with people that are maybe going through a low time right now, or maybe tools for the future?
So I think the first thing is to take ownership. It's really easy to be like, I feel a bit rubbish, but I'll do something about it next week. Don't take ownership and do something about it there and then. Put down the food that makes you feel like you're a fat pig, put down the drink that makes you feel like a drunk, whatever it is, take ownership of it and act on it. So that would be the first thing. The second thing I would say is to really learn about yourself. So that book I mentioned, Manage Your Mind, it's on Amazon. It's like 14 quid. Just buy it. And so to begin that process. And then I think to have an outlet would be the last one, and that could be art, it could be meditation, it could be running, it could be something that makes you present. I don't think watching TV is a hobby. I don't think it's a really positive thing to do when you feel really, really crap. I think having something that makes you present is really important to actually take in what's happening around you. So for me, meditation's been a really big one. And And I think that would be it. I think if you've got those three things down, you're in a pretty good spot to start kind of repairing and moving on a little bit.
That's great, man. And for anyone that wants to kind of know more about you, or wants to get their ears wrapped around Frontier and stuff, where can we find you, man?
So I'm in like three projects. The first one's Frontierer, and that's Facebook. You'll see it there. Instagram, it's like the word final, like the final frontier with an ER, Frontierer. So people can just Google that. You'll find it everywhere. Same with the music. And then Sectioned is another one if people are more into like the kind of violent, grindy stuff. Sectioned band on any social media. And then my latest endeavor is called Lift. And the only place you can see that just now is on Instagram, _Lift Music. It's completely empty except a profile picture, and that will be all coming to the forefront in the next like 3 weeks. I've got someone writing with me that is he's in the band with Pete Tong at the moment, and he plays with Jarvis Cocker as well. So I've got a really amazing kind of group of people working on it. But this isn't a plug for me. This is about mental health in general. So yeah, if people do want to chat about this stuff, I'm always open. I'm on Instagram myself. It's _Dan Stevenson. And yeah, I'm always open to the conversation, always open to giving my version of what can help. And I should definitely have said this before. I'm not qualified in any way to give advice. These are anecdotes from my life and things I've found helpful. I'm in no way qualified to give this, so don't hold me accountable if it doesn't work for you. I'm sorry if it doesn't.
Of course, no, definitely, man. I think I think owning up and meditating and having a creative outlet. Oh no, wait, sorry. It was ownership, creative outlet. What was the third one? Sorry.
So the second one was kind of learning yourself and learning about how the mind kind of works.
That's right.
And then the last one.
Yeah. I think absolutely. If those things, I think those things are a very good universal blueprint if you use them correctly. So Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
No problem at all. Yeah, it's been really, really cool to have a chat. And if you ever need another guest to shoot the breeze with, then you know where I'm at.
Definitely, man. Okay. Thank you so much, dude. See you later.
No worries.
Bye.
Do we stay on now?
Yeah, man, I'll just stop this here.